Hey everybody, it's Romania Black, and we're on episode 9 of Spy Family. The last episode was so good. The rule of 8 did not let us down. And so we are now moving into the final act of season 1. And so we've been introduced properly to Yuri, who is Yor's brother, Christopher Peterson, and I think a couple others were noting in the comments that Yor is 7 years older than Yuri, that she is 7 years older. So she is quite a bit. So she's 27, he's 20. And so she's his big sister who's been protecting him all these years by doing these odd jobs to make money. And Yuri is now, a member inside the intelligence agency for Anya, and he is looking out for Twilight and trying to capture that spy. And lo and behold, he doesn't realize that Twilight's right in front of him as Loid. So lots of shenanigans. Yuri has also not met Anya yet, so I'm curious. I'm sure that Anya's gonna win him over instantly, because that seems like she wins everybody over. So I'm sure that but I could be wrong. He may actually not like her at all. We'll see. I'm watching this episode a little bit ahead because I've been wary of spoilers, so I want to try to watch and see what's going to happen, especially after that cliffhanger. That cliffhanger had no right to be there, had no right to be as ridiculous as it was, and so as soon as I saw that cliffhanger, I'm like, I'm going to have to watch the next episode. I can't wait. So there was that, and I was trying to think if there's anything else I wanted to note. I do want to make note that a lot of people, I keep saying that Anya is 6. I realize she's probably 4 or 5 and that she did lie. For me and my brain, for me to keep track that these kids, like all of her classmates, are the same age. I know that they are 6, so I keep thinking that Anya, I'd say that Anya's 6, but in the back of my mind, I know she's probably 4 or 5. And that's probably to her detriment in this, right? Although I was thinking, we were talking in the Discord about Anya and Damien, like the hopeful future club, as Alexandra Q calls it, which I really like. But I kind of like the idea that when Damien and Anya are older, he's like, well, I'm 16 and you're 16. She's like, nope. Actually, I'm like 14. And she's like, it's cats out of the bag, right? But we'll see. I don't know. We got to get to that point. So, but I'm really excited for episode 9. As soon as that cliffhanger happened, I'm like, well, I've got to find out what's going to happen with Yuri. You know that Loid and Yor are going to win Yuri over, maybe, eventually, but it's just a matter of time. So we shall see. But I'm very curious to know what's going to happen in this episode. We only have 9, 10, 11, 12. We only have 4 episodes left, which includes this one. And then the good thing is we're going to roll right in, because I think they said October 1st is when the very first episode of Spy Family comes out. And that will work out really nicely, because episode 12 on Patreon will air on October 4th. And so that following week, we'll just roll right in. So it'll actually work out really nicely. I'll have some time to go ahead and record it and talk about it and get it ready. So it'll come out a little bit. You guys will probably be on episodes 2 or 3 by the time the first episode of season 2 comes out. But that's fine. That'll give you guys a chance to watch it, to know what's going to happen, and then watch the reaction. So I'm pretty excited to be able to watch it with you all in real time and to know what's going to go on. So that's so exciting. So in any case, we are going to start episode 9 of Spy Family and see what all happens. In the meantime, we got to get there first. We're going to do that here in 3, 2, 1, and let's go. Oh, this episode was a little anxiety inducing. Of all the episodes we've had so far of Spy Family, they've all been relatively great, fluff. Everything was fluff, no stress, everything was great. This episode was the first one I've watched in this series where I was like, ooh, buddy. Which, it's fitting, we're getting to the final act of season 1. If we're gonna have any type of tension and stress, now's the time to bring it up, because otherwise, it's just a fluffy, cute show. And it is still that, but I find it when we go and focus on, it's the weirdest thing, when we go and focus on Anya's story, even though hers is the most critical to the mission, her story, I don't feel stressed at all, even when she gets the bolt, even when she got the bolt, I was like, oh, well, Anya, you'll make it up. I feel maybe because she's a child, we think that, oh, it's fine, things will work out just fine. They're not going to make, stuff that happens to kids isn't going to have that much detrimental effect on the society in this fictional world, right? Right? So I find that interesting. And then, but it's when we go to the adult world it's super stressful, right? So there's that. Crazy talk, but anyway, so I am a little bit nervous because there's a few things in this episode that I was like that seemed foreshadowy, and I was like, oh no. I was like, are we doing this show? Are we going there? I don't know. So let's talk about it. Let's just talk about it. So we started this episode back off with Loid and Anya, Loid and Yuri, trying to pass off being the married couple there. And so Yuri's never been with a guy before. She's never dated anybody. She's been a business before pleasure woman, clearly. And that's relatable. That's understandable that she's like, I've never really dated a guy. I mean, to be honest, Yuri's profession is kind of like Loid's. Loid's has never, he's dated women, but it's been under the guise as Twilight, and it's been for the sake of his missions. He's never like had a personal relationship, it doesn't seem, that's been outside what's been required by Wise. And the same thing kind of follows suit with Yuri. She's never really been in a relationship because she's an assassin. She ain't got time for that. She's killing people. She doesn't have time to go on a date with them. And so it's kind of understandable where she kind of freaks out, like, oh God, this is, because one, she wants to make it all work out. She wants to keep the relationship going. But two, she doesn't think, maybe she doesn't want Loid to know that she's never been in a relationship before. And she's like, oh, what do I do? And so then she's like, okay, I've read somewhere your first kiss tastes like lemons. I don't know where that comes from, but okay. But then she looks at the fish and she's like, oh, well, interesting. She's like, that'd go perfectly with fish. And then she kind of gets off topic. Yuri kind of gets a little aloof sometimes, and she kind of drifts off topic, and she's like, oh, calm down, get a hold of yourself. And to be fair, Loid's really hot, so I don't blame her for being a little freaked out, being like, oh God, what do I do? And I love that he's very gentlemanly. Loid is very gentlemanly, where he like closes his eyes to smooch her. It's really cute. And she's like, no, wait, hold on. She's like, and I love that she grabs the wine bottle and like karate chops the cork off, which is great. And she's like, liquid courage. I can't do this sober. And I love she just downs the wine and is like, yeah, there's no way I can do this sober. And she's like, thank you for waiting. It's funny because she kind of stumbles and slurs her speech, kind of like Anya does. But with Anya, she's like 4 to 5 years old, so it makes sense. And yours is that she's drunk. She's like, no. And then Loid's like, right. I feel like by the time Yuri leaves, Loid is like, what family have I married into? If you've ever been in a relationship with somebody, and granted, everybody's families are weird. Everybody has weirdness in their family. If you don't think that your family does have weirdness, you might be the weirdness, right? So every family has some oddity to it. It's just inevitable. And so when you date somebody, it is only a matter of time before you meet that oddity. And, it's just, do you handle it or not handle it? And the funny thing is, it feels like Loid is like for the first time realizing just kind of how odd this family is. And he's like, I'm married into this, which is great, right? And so he's like, and I love that he tells her, he's like, we don't have to do this if you don't want to. That got to me because I was like, Loid, for being a man that is a spy and all about the mission and that the mission has to take precedence, he is respectful and cares about her enough that he's like, if you really don't want to do this, we don't have to. We'll find a way around it. And that to me, like, I really respected Loid in this episode. At this point, there's a couple of questionable things. I'm like, Loid, but I do respect him a lot and like that he's like, no, I'm not going to force you to do something you don't want to. And it's like, good on you, Loid. That's really good. And then she's like, this ish for my sake as well. I'll do my best. She's like, I have to do this too. And so it's so funny. And then of course, meanwhile, Flock, aka Yuri, is like, can you do it or not? I'm sorry, but for those of you that have watched Attack on Titan, his voice actor, the character he plays on Attack on Titan, when he was screaming and yelling and running towards them, all I could picture was that character. And I was like, oh my God, like it was sending me. I was like, this is amazing. And he's like, prove to me you're a married couple, which Yuri is. And she fires that fork at him and cuts his face. She gotta keep your mouth shut, Yuri. I was like, oh my God, I'll show you how in love we are. And Loid, sir, when she like pushes him down, I'm like, and he's like, sister. I love when she pushes the hair back. Like it's like she's going to get it out of her face. And he's like, you're. And bless his heart, Loid. Now, to be fair, Loid does not have the blushy face in this moment, right? He's just like, there's a little sweat drop, but he's just like, fine, I'll accept it. And he's like, okay. Loid is able to keep his composure and his control rather well, because girl, like any other man, I think if she'd pushed him down like that, would have been like, okay. And he's like, it's for the mission. So I love that he's a gentleman enough that he closes his eyes. It's so cute. And then of course we go to the OP, because why wouldn't we? And so Yuri is the one that has the issue. And I said this in the last reaction. I'm like, I wonder if Yuri is going to be like, he can't take the sight of her kissing him. Because he says, how lewd. And I'm like, you asked them to do that. You made them kiss each other. This is your fault, Yuri. But what I love about it is that I wondered if he was going to be the one to break them up. And he is. But this flashback where he's like, oh, sister. And he gets the 100% on the science exam and scores the highest. It's like, okay, establishing that Yuri is very intelligent. Right, it's just around his sister that he has a major critical weakness. And she says, I'll reward you with a kiss. Now, that's not unusual for a sister to do. I don't know, I guess it depends on your culture too. Some cultures are very, very physical and kiss a lot, and some cultures are not. And some families are, and some families are not. My family, like, we hug and stuff. We don't like, we do the kiss on the cheek. Yeah, that's true. Not as a reward for a grade, but like as a greeting, right? My family does do like the cheek kiss as a greeting, and when you leave, you like say goodbye, you kiss them on the cheek. My family does that. That's totally normal. But I had a friend in college that his family, like, there was no physical contact. His family was like, no. Like, there was no hugging. There was no kiss on the cheek. It was like, we did not get physical at all. And I was like, I remember going to his house for the first time and like expecting like a hug or something. I was like, oh no, we're not doing that. We're not that family. Okay. And it's kind of jarring if you're used to that. So it's curious that Yuri, he gets all blushy and like, eyes watery with the cheek, but his crush on Yuri. And I like they have the representation of the plant, like the big plant and the little plant next to each other. That's really cute. It's a nice little visual representation. But then he says, when I grow up, sis, and she's just like, yes. And he's like, I'm going to marry you. And she's like, oh my. And the answer to that question, the answer to that should have been like, oh my, no, you don't marry your sister, little brother. That's cute, but we're not going to get married. That should have been the answer. But instead, old Cersei here is like, then I guess I'll just have to wait patiently for you. And I was like, no, don't encourage him. It's had a detrimental effect on him. I was like, Yuri is like, still. And I love that the subtitles, they go, wait patiently for you, wait patiently for you. And they get smaller and smaller. It's a little detail. It's the tiniest thing, but I really, really love it in this episode. I'm like, that's so perfect. And his tear is getting into his cut. It's like he has the cut on the cheek and it's right below his eye, and the tear is going into the blood. Like, it's just that little detail. Like, he could have cried on the other side, but the mangaka made it on the same side as the blood to mix the tears and the blood together. Oh my God. I'm like, blood is thicker than water. Is it thicker than tears? And then that's when he's like, you, and he's like, you can't, sister. Like, he can't, seeing you kiss another man in front of me is too much. He's like, I can't do it. And Loid's like, ah, shit. He's like, oh, I knew it. Yeah, Loid's like, this is not good. And yours like, and she's like, I just can't do it. So as much as I want Loid and Yor to get together by the end of this series, as much as I want them to get together and be an actual couple and actually get married, I realize that this manga has been going on for a while, a little bit, and that we're far from that, and that it's primarily a comedy, not a romance. And so Yor, she's just like, nope, I can't do it. And then she's like, I just can't, because she's drunk. She goes to slap him. She's like, I just can't. And then misses him and hits Yuri. And Loid's like, oh shit. And I love the spinning effect. Like, she has the arm and it gets him and his whole body just spins. Like, just spins. It's amazing. Into the roses. The ones he got for her. And I love that Anya thinks it's an earthquake. She's like, is it the end of the world? And she just collapses again. Oh my God, it's great. It's wonderful. Absolutely wonderful. I love it so much. And she just goes right back to sleep. But her hand is red from where she slapped him. And Loid is like, what the hell? This family. And I love that he just has the spurts of blood coming out of him. Oh my God. He's like, if you're going to treat me like that just because I tried to stop you from kissing him, I guess you couldn't wait to do naughty things with him. I'm like, Yuri, what is wrong with you? I see exactly why they cast him to voice act this character. Exactly. Because he's voiced so many different characters whose emotions, like, range from, like, being, like, stoic and edgelord to being, like, manic and screaming to, like, being, this is God if Flock had a sister complex. This is it. But yeah, like, the way that they draw him, he is so overly dramatic. I was like, Yuri. He's like, I was a fool to test you. And Loid's like, so you were testing her. Okay. He's like, perhaps my feelings were being truly tested here. I'm like, dude, you all need to not drink. And I like that Loid's like, you're bleeding. And he's just like, you may have laid claim on my sister's lips for now. And yours like, oh my God, no. She's like, stop being indecent. And makes him flip all over again. And crashes into the roses again. The image of... I want to take a picture of it. The image of Loid watching them, and he's like collapsed onto the cabinet, and there's rose petals everywhere, and he's bleeding, and yours just like head in her hands. It's like, that's the moment you realize I've married crazy. And he doesn't say anything. He does not say anything, but there's just like blood splurting out everywhere. I'm like, oh my God. And Loid's like, you're really bleeding. You need to go to a hospital. He's like, is this normal for them? It's great. And like, she's like stumbling towards him. They're like just the oddest, and I love it. But then they like get a hold of each other. And the thing of it is that Loid like goes over to help them, and they do like a little spin around. It's almost romantic, which I was like, they're brother and sister, but it's weird. It's almost romantic, and they like hold each other, but they're siblings. They've all each other's ever had. And she's like, can I call you a taxi? And he's like, you're such a worrywart. And that's when Loid's like, oh, like he sees them be siblings. And he's like, and he says he's a little envious. Like he never had that growing up. He didn't have a sibling, so he didn't have family. And so he's always been kind of alone. And it's never, I mean, he's tried to hide that it's bothered him with the whole spy thing. But seeing them together, Loid's like, I kind of want what they have. And I love it. He's like, and Loid's trying to pass off as the dutiful husband. And Yuri's like, he's like, I was admiring what lovely siblings you are. You must always have been there for each other. And at that moment, you see them both grasp each other like on the back. And it's like, yeah, they've always been there for each other. And it's really cute that now Yuri's like taller than her and everything. It's adorable. He's like, thanks for protecting Europe until now. I'm sure you've been through many hardships. And I love that Yuri's like, oh my God, I don't want to admit that you're a good guy. And so Loid like tries to offer help to them. And I love that Loid is so much taller than Yuri and Yor. It's kind of funny. And then, of course, no, Yuri won't have it. He's like, I won't ask for help from you. I'm going home with all the blood and everything. And they're like, we'll come back again soon. And I love that he's like, if you make my sister cry. And he was going to say, I'll have you executed. I am sad that Yuri did not get to meet Anya. I was really hoping he'd get to meet Anya, because my theory is still that he's going to help her, like tutor her. I'm really sad he didn't get to meet Anya, but he says he's going to come back to see them. So that's my hope, is that he's going to come back and then check on them again. That's when he'll meet Anya. And he's like, I'll prove you're tricking my sister. And she's like, I'm not being tricked. But he's on to Loid, right? And he's like, hear me, Loid Forger. If you even make my sister cry even a little bit, I'll have you executed. And he almost says executed. But then he stops. He's like, well, you know. like he just is like, you know what I mean? And leaves. And Loid figured it out, because Loid knows that he's in the secret police, right? It's great. And he just like runs out. He's like, you'll rue the day. Oh my God, he's so dramatic. I love it. And Loid, with the bags under his eyes, he's like, oh God. She's like, I'll just be mindful of your yelling. It'll disturb the neighbors, as she's yelling, right? So yeah, Loid's like, I should be careful. I've noticed throughout this episode that they used a lot of the primary colors. They had red, blue, and yellow like throughout, or they had like red and blue and green. Like they did a lot of like the color matching up and everything. But oh my God. And then them all cleaning up. And of course, Loid checks to see if there's any wiretaps, But that was what Yuri was intending to do until he got drunk. So Loid is not wrong for suspecting him. And he's like, well, since he's with the secret police, he's like, he may try to wiretap because it's his sister. Mm-hmm. And so there's a lot of miscommunication in this episode. And miscommunication always bugs me, in especially like rom-coms and stuff, because I'm like, if you just talk it out, like there's some series I've been reading or watching, they handle the miscommunication really well, and it's a thing, and then they solve it, and they kind of do that in this episode, and I'm glad they resolve it in this episode, because I was like, if it keeps going, I'm like, no, get that drama out of here, and they do, which I'm glad. Yeah, thank you for welcoming him into your family. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, Loid understands that Yuri loves her a lot, like too much. And so he kind of relates to her. He's like, other than my daughter, Anya, I don't have anybody, I've never had anybody, so I'm kind of envious. And then he acknowledges that even though Anya's part of his pretend family. And it's like, And so Yor's like, oh, and she's so sweet when she smiles like that, right? And so then the next day, I do love before we start the next day though, we have Anya who's like tossing and turning and she's like, Papa, please save Earth. And then we cut to Yor who's saying, now Yuri, you'll make me mad if you hit Loid. So she doesn't want Yuri to hurt Loid. So that's going to be a thing. If Yuri comes after Loid suspecting him as Twilight, that's going to be a thing. And then we cut to Loid, who, for the record, I love his setup. I love how his room is. He has the chair right next to his bed with the lamp, and he's reading. And of course, what is he reading? He's reading the Bondman books to try to get something for Anya to do. Mm-hmm. But he's like, I can't remember the last time I felt envious of someone else. And it's of those two. And he's like, I'm sure I'm just exhausted. No, he's always wanted a family. And so this is like the first time he's seeing he's been seeing like how a family actually is, and seeing the bond between Yor and Yuri, he realizes he wants that, but he also has a mission. So, and I love that Yuri's just like, they're like, get to a hospital, dude. You're bleeding everywhere. And so then Anya comes up and she like wakes up, and then of course Anya finds out that her uncle, Unky, works for the secret police. And I like that Anya doesn't know what the secret police is. She's like, secret police, what is that? Because it's not been on Bondman, right? So she wouldn't know. And so using her power of deduction, she's like, well, it's secret and it's police. So it sounds exciting. Waka waku. She's like, excitement. So maybe her being around Yuri could be interesting because she knows exactly what he'll be thinking. So it might be good for her to be around Yuri, because then she'll know kind of what his plans are. But she almost gives herself away in this episode because she doesn't want Loid and Yor to fight. She's like, because she wants them to stay a family so that she can stay with them. For the record though, it may have been mean to say that Yor's cooking was bad, but what the hell did she make? Like fish heads and mushrooms and bones. I was like, and Loid just eats it like it's nothing because he doesn't want to insult her. But I'm like, if I was a 5-year-old kid, I'd probably say the same thing. I'd probably say that it was really bad cooking too. So I don't blame Anya for going that route. But, she's trying to see what her parents are thinking. And she hears Loid say that he needs to focus on her education, like not worry about Yuri. And they eat the food. And I guess... And then Yor's like, it's okay, you'll see him soon. And meanwhile, Loid is thinking, has this threat really passed? Well, no, he's going to be coming back there to test you. And so then he's like, Yor Breyer, your brother's a member of the secret police. He's like, there was nothing suspicious about her earlier, which is kind of a good point to bring up because, yeah, she wouldn't be suspicious at all. Yuri, I'm sure, would also make sure that her record is pretty spot-free and clean too because he wants to protect his sister. So Loid is kind of thinking, well, has Yuri been protecting her this whole time? Is her record really not as scot clean as we think it is? She's also an assassin whose employer, I'm sure, is helping to keep her record clean as well. So he has right to be suspicious. And he's like, she doesn't seem to know what her brother's true occupation is. So my intuition says she's clear. And if she knew her brother worked at the Secret Service, then there'd be no concern over suspicion. There'd be no concern about her being single and it being suspicious. So, and Anya's listening to this the whole time. But he's like, it's dangerous to be too certain. What if she's just acting and this is all a lie to get closer to me? And it's like, well, she is lying to you. She's an assassin, but it's not really to get closer to you. It's just because she's using you as a front, just like you're using her. So, and Anya knows that, right? And so he's like, suspect everything, Twilight. And Anya's like, and she almost gives it away. She's like, no, Mama. She's like, Mama's fine. And she catches herself. She's like, oh shit. She's like, no. And then she uses the bad at cooking line, which just makes Yor feel terrible, because Yor already has insecurities about being a good wife and like upholding her part of the bargain for Loid. And so the whole bad cooking thing just kind of makes it even worse. And then the wiretap that Loid uses on her. He says he needs to do it to prove Yor's innocence, which, yeah, I get behind it. But I was really dreading the whole wiretap scheme, because I was like, I'm glad in hindsight that he takes that and crumbles it, and the representation of that. I really like that in the episode. But as soon as he wiretapped her, I was like, because that's like, you know, the idea of this relationship built on trust in one another. And it's a flimsy house of cards to begin with, because it is a flimsy house of cards from the start, because they're both lying to one another. But that whole deception with the wiretap, I'm like, Yor at least it would not do anything like that. But she's an assassin, not a spy, right? And so I was a little bit dreading that whole wiretap this episode, being like, and she thought he was going to give her a goodbye kiss. And Anya's like, what did I miss? She's like, what? I love that Anya's like, what did I miss last night while I was asleep? Huh? What's Mama and Papa doing? And she's like, and the way she says it, I haven't forgotten about last night. And saying, I can't kiss or even cook. She's like, Loid managed to smooth things over last night, but I'm probably not acting like a proper wife. And it's so sad, because yeah, I mean, the whole cooking thing, they brought it up during the interview that she was a bad cook and not doing her role as a wife. And now we're seeing that, yeah, that's affected her. And Anya is saying that has just brought it up again. And her not being able to follow through with the kiss, like Yor just feels really bad in this episode. And Loid's trying to erase all suspicion from her. But I hate it when she said that he's gotten sick of her being disappointing. I was like, no, that's not true at all. And Anya's like, I'm with Anya. I was like, stop thinking that. And he's like, I need to be on my guard. So Loid isn't being distant because he's mad at Yor. He's being distant because he's trying to like protect the mission and protect like Anya and the family and it all from crumbling. And Yor thinks that he's disappointed with her and that she's done a terrible job. And Anya's like, you both need to stop. Like, I'm glad that they resolved it this episode. I'm glad that Anya, she was like, get along. I was like, Anya, be the glue. Be the glue, girl. And she's like, Mama and Papa need to get along. They do. Otherwise, this mission will crumble. And I like that she's like, figure it out. Anya's like, I'm going to school today. Figure it out. So, yeah. So we cut back to Yor. I love that Anya, when she gets on the bus, she like is old lady granny style walks on it. It's great. But we cut back to Yuri, right? To Yuri at his locker. And there's like wine bottles and everything on top of there. It's very lived in. But Yuri, all the pictures of Yor in his locker, like that is an unhealthy relationship with your sister. Like it's one thing to love your sister, but he like loves his sister. And it's like, dude. And I like that the general there, the lieutenant, is like, you need to maybe back off a wee bit. He's like, did you celebrate your sister's wedding yesterday? And he's like, I don't remember what happened. And he's like, you got drunk and picked a fight with her husband. So that establishes that Yuri has gotten drunk and picked a fight with people before. Like the lieutenant knows that he's a lightweight and can't hold his liquor. So there's that, right? He's like, you need to quit drinking. He's like, it's not good for you. He's like, I can't let a guy like that be with my sister. And he's like, oh, is he that disagreeable? And this guy's locker's on that side with Yuri. So he's had to see those pictures of Yor every day. I'm sure he's like, dude, you need to find yourself another lady. Like, really would help you. And then I like that, of course, Yuri is seeing all the different versions of Loid from that night. And he's like, I think he was a good guy. Like, he doesn't want to admit that he was good. Right? And that's so frustrating. Like, not brother and sister, but if you like somebody and they're dating someone and the person they're dating is actually a really nice guy or a really nice person, and you're like, well, damn it. And you can't hate them, and you're like, well, no, you're dating somebody really nice, so dang it. So you can't fault them for it, right? And he says, but con men and spies always try to act like good people. He's like, that's it. Hopefully he's a spy and I can throw him in a cell. Surprise of the century. The one man you're looking for is the one man that's right in front of you. And the lieutenant's like, now calm down. Do you have any proof of this? And he's like, shit. He's like, I forgot to plug their living room and their bedrooms. You kind of goofed, Yuri. And I love that he's like, no! And he just hits himself on the locker. He's like, if I happen to hear Sis's voice in those situations, okay. So he's operating under the guise that if they are actually married, he's like, what if I'm wrong and they are married and he hears them having sex or something? Oh no, it'd be the end for Yuri. He would spontaneously combust. And he's like, my heart would be able to bear it. And he just like beats himself over the locker. I died when the lieutenant is like, did you give yourself those injuries? The thing of it is he did give himself those injuries, kind of. He pushed him. He's the one that forced them to try to kiss each other. He rushed in to stop them. It's kind of Yuri's fault that he was injured. So when he said that, I was like, I died. It was great. And then the flicker of the lighter is what brings them back to reality and changes the mood of the situation, right? And he says, you need to detach from your sister so you can concentrate on your work more. That's the thing in this episode. Frankie tells Loid that he needs to quit feeling guilty and getting attached to Yor. And the lieutenant is telling Yuri he needs to quit getting attached to Yor. So I feel kind of bad for Yor in this episode because she's just trying to do her best. And these other sides of both her brother and Loid are telling them to not get involved with her. And it's like, I feel like it's just going to be Yor and Anya by the end of this. And she's going to take Anya, if Loid decides to leave. And we'll talk about that. He's like, our job is to capture spies from the West, namely Twilight, because that will lead to your sister's safety. So he's tying that whole thing, being like, we're doing this for your sister. You're rising the ranks and being this good spy for us and good Secret Service member because it's going to help your sister. Right? And Yuri's like, I know that. Mm-hmm. The day you make my sister cry. Yeah, I'm like, and that's such foreshadowing. I'm like, I'm just waiting at some point for there to be, because here's the thing. This is the thing that gets me beyond all of this, is at the very end of the day, Loid is just using Yor and Anya to complete a mission, right? He's just using them. So at the end of the day, he is planning on leaving them. And if Yor finds that out, and if Anya finds out, they're going to be, Anya's going to be devastated if Loid leaves her. And if Yor gets left by him, she's going to feel bad too, I feel. So that whole crying deal, I'm like, it's not going to be good. And I'm not looking forward to that at all. But we cut to her and she is crying. So I'm like, oh, if Yuri knew how upset she felt. Like she's just been sniffling all day. And then she said, this is my first time being with a man in general. And I'm not sure how to act. And Loid is like, oh, so she really has never been with a guy before. Interesting. I'm worried that things can't go on like this. And yeah, she's worried that she's not going to be able to live up the standards. And everybody, and her friends are like, well, just call it quits. And I like that Loid kind of recognizes like her relationship with her coworkers is a bit, I'm like, they're petty bitches. They're not giving her good advice at all. And so then she goes to the post office to mail the document and sees the savings deposit. And I wondered if they were going to open the joint bank account to like save money for Anya for like her school and everything. So she could like have some money to saved up to help pay for like her schooling and stuff. I was really hoping that she would suggest that to Loid, be like, let's open a joint bank account. But she says that we have these separate accounts. And that she's like, I could contribute some for my actual job, but that would help Loid out. But on the other hand, she's like, I can't let him get suspicious of me. She's like, if he accidentally finds out about like some money from my other job, that could be a problem. And she's like, and then I like that she says, plus, I don't think the thing between me and Loid is really a financial issue. She's like, it's not, finances has nothing to do with it. It's that they're both hiding this secret side of themselves from each other. It's like, so yeah. So the thing of it is that she gets stopped by the troops. And at first I was like, wait a minute. And it took me a second. Like the guy that Frankie's playing with his like afro sticking out from it. I was like, huh. But the thing of it is that it took me a second to realize that that's not the lieutenant, right? Because in my head, I was so confused. I was like, now wait a minute. The lieutenant knows. He's seen that picture of that woman every day in the office from Yuri's locker. So I was like, why would he stop and question her? And then you find out that it's Loid. And this part was I was like, oh my gosh, Loid, what are you doing? Because she's like, yeah, I'm married. And Frankie's like, we're not hitting on you. And he's like, what the hell is this? And he's like, why did you have me dressed like this so we can question your wife? And he's like, it's for my mission. But is it for his mission? Or is it, I mean, it is. But he's also doing it to drive suspicion away from her to keep her safe, right? So, God, this interrogation scene, though, I was like, I felt bad for Yor. Like, I felt bad for this episode because I'm like, he wiretapped her and then he interrogates her. She feels awful about it. She has no clue what's going on. Like, it's like literally Yor's worst day. And Loid's just trying to figure out if she's suspicious or not. And I was like, she clearly doesn't know. By the end of this, we find out she does not know that her brother's in the secret police. Frankie takes it very seriously. Frankie is like getting all up in this role, like getting all sleazy and creepy. And she's like, I'm married. No. And so at the end of this, Loid questions, like, she's either going to say she knows Yuri to get out of the situation and prove that she knows he's in the Secret Service, or she's not, right? And it'll draw suspicions for herself. And he's trying to get her to figure out what to do. And she makes the right question. She talks about how Loid and Yuri are upstanding citizens. She's like, I don't have to answer anything to you. I didn't do anything wrong. And Frankie makes the mistake of going at her, and that was a bad no-no because she like gets him to the ground and like nearly dislocates his arm. And she doesn't even have the scary face yet. She's just like, I'm quite certain I mentioned I was married, so get your hands off. I was like, oh yes, Yor. Girl, yes, please. She's like, please do not touch me so casually. And I like that Loid looks down at him like, noted. But he doesn't question her skills as a fighter at all. He doesn't question it. Like, ever. So that's curious. It's almost like, I wonder if Loid puts some things to the back of his brain because he doesn't want to think about them. But at this point, he's trying to prove she's innocent. So, and I love that she threatens him. She's like, if you unjustly harm either of them. And like, I love that Frankie like twitches when she like clicks the hand. She's like, I don't care if I'm dealing with you two. I'll show no mercy. And in her eyes, she's from Ostenia. So if the secret police take her in, then she could probably, in her mind, she's probably thinking, well, I'll just contact my boss who's hired me as an assassin and they'll get me out of this. So really, she has nothing to lose. She doesn't know her brother's working for the secret police, but she knows that if she gets cornered by them, she has an out. So, which is interesting. And I don't know if Loid gets that. But then they pass off some BS that it's not the right letter. And they're like, okay, on your merry way. Sorry about that. Sorry, man. We didn't mean to get you all worried and flustered. And she's like, this has been the worst day ever. I feel for yours. She's like, this has been such a bad day. She's like, I can't. And then that's when Frankie, like when she walks away, Frankie is like, okay, man, don't tell me you're feeling guilty for doubting her. And he's like, I don't. He's like, I've warned you about this before, but don't develop unnecessary feelings for her. Which he is. Now, is Loid developing like a romantic feeling for Yor? I don't think so yet. I don't think so. Because during the whole kiss scene, there was like no blushy face. He wasn't like, he was like trying to be a gentleman about it. But when he sees her and Yuri together, I feel like Loid is developing an attachment to Yor, that he wants to care for her, you know, and be there for her. And it's kind of like a family situation. I don't think he romantically has feelings for her yet, but he does care about her. And Frankie's like, you can't develop these feelings. If you start caring about her, how are you going to leave her later when the mission's over? He's like, what are you going to do? He's like, you're going to be between a rock and a hard place. But this entire mission was doomed to have that happen, right? It was doomed to have that happen. And I know a lot of people would be like, well, when he dated that CEO's daughter, he was dating her and she was manipulated, but he left her alone and she's probably okay. But that's dating. Like, that's just going on some dates to get some intel. Like, they didn't even have to get physical, even though they might have, based on what he told the CEO. But this is different. This is not only involving a woman and making her your wife, and under the presumption that he cares about her and is, you know, even though it's a pretend family, but also there's a kid involved. And the kid, you know, there's a lot of factors to Anya. We've talked about that in previous episodes. So this mission is a little bit different than anything Loid's done before. And I get where Frankie's coming from, but I'm like, that's hard. To get invested in a family like this and then not care, that's hard. And he's just slipped a little bit, right? He's like, don't trust anyone. We have no other way to survive. Which is so sad, right? And he's like, yeah. And then he says somehow it's extremely infuriating to hear those words from that face. And he rips the face off. Mm-hmm. Yep. He's like, you made that face. I was going to get some chicks with it. Meanwhile, Yor is so distressed. She's like, I've ruined everything as a wife. I like in this world that it's the primary colors is the light. It's red, yellow, and blue are the colors of the stoplight. I like it. She's like, I've destroyed the forgers. And then Loid comes up to her. And at this point, I do like what Loid does. He takes the wiretap away. He takes the wiretap away and destroys it because he knows he can trust her. And he tries to compliment her and make her feel better. And he's like, nobody's perfect. You're not going to be a perfect parent. You're not going to be a perfect spouse. You're not going to be a perfect partner. You can only be yourself and do the best that you can. And that person has to accept you for who you are and not try. Because he's like, if you try to be the perfect wife, you're going to give up something of what you are and you're going to lose something in that. He's like, and I don't want that to happen. He's like, I married you for you, Yor. I don't want you to try to change that. And that's such like a good thing that's like in reality too. Like just because you're in a relationship or don't try to be something you're not, because it's not going to work out in the end. You're just fooling yourself. And he says many people suffering like that come to my hospital all the time. So it's like a nice little tie into his work job. And I like that he smiles. He's like, putting on an act all the time can become tiring. It's like pot calling the kettle black. And that's so ironic because they are putting on an act the whole time. But I feel like at times like these, they kind of let their guard down a little bit and they are being themselves. That's where the trouble comes in, because there are times where Loid is himself and Yor is herself around, especially around Anya and around each other. And it's building that trust. But at the same time, when they both reveal themselves, it's going to be frustrating. And the crazy thing is Anya's known this whole time. So at least Anya won't be heartbroken when they reveal who they are, because she's known this entire time. He's like, I want you to be as you are, Yor. I really wanted them to hold hands like when they left. He's like, the more confident you seem, the less... This line, the more confident you seem, the less people will suspect anything. Like, you know, on the nose. Very on the nose. I really wanted them to hold hands, though. I thought for a split second he'd, like, grab her hand or something. I was really hoping that would happen as they walk down the street. And he destroys the wiretap. And then they buy cake on the way home to celebrate their 1-year anniversary. And then Anya, I love that when Anya gets home, she reads their minds and we don't have to hear what they say. She just smiles and we instantly know that it's all smoothed over. And that little face, she's like, Mama and Papa are getting along. And they're like, well, of course we are. They're like, we weren't fighting to begin with. What are you talking about? And they have the 3 cups, the coffee, the tea, and the hot chocolate. Oh, and having their cake. That is beyond precious. So yeah, setting up Yuri's relationship with Yor, his desire to hunt down Twilight. He's going to probably go back and try to tap the house. Yor is trusted by Loid now. Loid has all the trust in her. All that's good. We're all good to go. You know. Everything's great, right? So, yeah, I'm pretty excited to see these last 3 episodes, but I can't believe we only have 3 episodes left. But it's fine, because then we have the new season, so that's exciting, right? So I'm pretty excited to see what's going to happen, but I'm very curious to know your thoughts down below, what you all thought of this episode. I'm excited to see the last 3 and to see what we're going to get before the core 1 ends and we start season 2. So, in the meantime, I hope you all have a wonderful week. Please stay safe, take care, and yeah, I'll be back very soon with more Spy Family.